Okay, so this is what kind of we're looking at here. Officially, the season is suspended.
Yeah.
The players have been told to go home. Like the Rangers were in Denver. They're not going to Arizona. They're coming
That was
home.
earlier today. They were told just you're not going to Arizona. You're
Yeah,
going
but
back.
now they're obviously coming home officially.
Yeah.
No practicing or anything like that right now. Basically, just go home, stay home, and we'll see how this goes, and we'll figure this out, and we'll kind of go from there. And I think that one thing I have heard is that the league is open to ideas on, depending on when everything comes back, what it's going to look like.
So is that so the idea is, are they coming from the players? Is it coming from the GMs? Is it coming?
Oh, we should all be making our suggestions as far as I'm concerned. Well, you know what?
Hang on. I believe that. I think the NHL is wide open on accepting and listening to any ideas that are available.
From who? The fans?
You fans, Elliotte.
Hey,
Board of
shoot
Governors,
your
like
shot,
everyone.
Anthony. That's the way I
Yeah.
always look at life, right?
Yeah, true.
Well, I'll tell you this. One player was texting me. He said that he can see an issue for the players. Like, just forget about the financial stuff for a second.
Sure.
For the players that are just outside the playoffs, they're going to be upset if it just gets told, okay, only the teams that are in are competing for the Stanley Cup. If we get to that point.
It would have changed how they played some of those games.
I do.
Pop your mic on there, Barney.
Radio 101. Turn the mic
Yeah, I'm
on.
new. I'm new.
Rookie.
So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I do think that it gives an opportunity, providing hopefully we're back as soon as possible, to do something creative. And one player whose team is just outside of the playoffs right now said that it will be a problem if we're told just because it ended early, we can't find a way to compete.
So what about a one-game playoff where the teams are within 1 point or 2 points of each other that are on the cusp? That's an idea.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we're talking about here, that nothing is ruled out, and that might be a way to go. I do think that you see in Game 82, when teams are desperate, they play differently. They have to different lineup, how they deploy players, holding the goalie in a tied game.
You can play
you have to know the season's ending.
You can play all the games in one day, or one time frame where you just do it a 3-on-3 overtime. There's 4 games. Let's go.
I've always said if I could have the ear of the commissioner for 5 minutes, my message would be get your game out of June. That's not going
into July.
That's not going to happen. And now the question becomes, as who knows, this hiatus, this suspension could last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, who knows? It looks like this will go again into June as it was already planned, maybe into July as well. I do wonder if the NHL has in their mind, maybe you have in your mind, again, this is going to sound like lockout language going back to the last 2 lockouts. Is there any type of drop dead date where you say, you know what, we can't push into this deep into July. We need to just focus on next season at this point. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but as we're looking out at this thing,
I don't know if there's an answer at this point in time. The NBA asked their teams to make dates available for July.
Right.
The NHL will likely do the same thing. I mean, it is a possibility. I think, like I said, Jeff, I think everything is on the table. If they can salvage anything that they can to, number one, they want to award the Stanley Cup.
yes.
They did mention that in the press release. I noticed that.
Yes, and I was told it is no surprise that was mentioned in the press release, because I believe when they told the teams today, one of the first things they said was, we do want to award the Stanley Cup this year. Number two, you're trying to limit the financial damage as much as you can. Where do you make the most money? In the playoffs. And if you can create something that's interesting, look at what's happening right now. Sports fans are going to be starving for sports of some kind, by the end of the week, never mind in 2 weeks. So if you can create something that's interesting and exciting, you can recover to some degree. And so I think that that's going to be what we're looking at here, if you can.
Fascinating. Yeah, you're interesting to see if there's some neutral site where you can bring a bunch of teams to and play out a tournament of some variety for teams on the cusp, but something to create an event to kind of capture the attention in maybe a lower risk area. by the time this is all said and done.
That'll be our 2-hour show tomorrow, by the way. We have homework tonight, gentlemen.
All right. Yeah, well, I was actually just thinking about the Stanley Cup. I believe that twice in the history of the league it's not been awarded the 0405
1919
lockout.
and then 0405
The
lockout.
Spanish flu was the last one, or in 1718 or
Took
whatever.
Joe
it
Hall's
was,
life.
1819.
Yeah.
1819, yeah. So there is some precedent for it happening, but that's interesting that they did note in the press release that it's something they want to avoid.
And I heard it was a point of emphasis on the phone call, too.
I think it should be too, just considering all that's gone into the season with money, time, and effort for everyone. You're pretty deep into the season here to just call it good. You know?
Oh, you have financial investment, you have emotional investment, not just with with players and executives and coaches, but with fans.
You got cup
certainly.
windows. You got teams
Absolutely.
building to particular climaxes, and that happens to be this year for some.
Do we know of any leagues that are, and again, this is getting ahead of ourselves here, but that's where we're at right now with the NHL officially announcing that the league has been suspended and put on hiatus with an expectation and a hope to return. What does this mean for things like the draft? We look at other tent poles where teams congregate. It's not just games, but this year the draft is in Montreal.
Boy, procrastinators sure get hit by this, don't they? If they haven't seen all their guys yet. Like if you did a lot of scouting in the early part of the season, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. Not going to see a whole lot of hockey from now till then.
Well,
if any,
a lot of scouts have been taken off the road too.
at this point, yeah.
Yeah, you're not traveling to Europe. We
I
talked
think,
to Sam
I think
Cosentino.
there were some guys who were rushing to get back
Yeah.
from
Knowing
Europe
that
today.
this was coming.